Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another week in review Monday edition. I would have done this yesterday or over the weekend, but kind of had a last minute trip out of town on Saturday. There was a death in the family, so I had to go and tend to family members and see them and all that stuff. But came back yesterday, got back in the early afternoon, and I just had so much stuff to do, and also had to go to the store, and I was supposed to meet with somebody yesterday, so I did that, and I just didn't have it in me to sit down and do this video and all the editing and all that stuff and uploading. Just because I just wanted to sit and relax and decompress in the evening after all. It was a really hectic weekend. So, with all that aside, I'm teleworking today, so I have some time here in the morning to get this stuff done. And boy, what a crazy few days past week it has been. As you can no doubt see on the screen in front of you, the first article I have is, of course, Biden's reckless comments in his speech in Warsaw, Poland, and basically him saying, as you can see there, I stopped the video where the quote of the year probably when it comes to this whole situation in Ukraine, where Joe Biden says this of Vladimir Putin, quote, "For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power." So, there are a number of things wrong with this statement. And I understand what his explanation was. He was saying this as a personal opinion and in a moment of frustration and emotion. And I understand that, but if you're going to go off the cusp and react emotionally to things like this, and when you do, things like this get said, I would believe what the Vulcans call in Star Trek, you are emotionally compromised. And you cannot remain in command. So, because in situations like this, you cannot let your emotions dictate what you're going to say in the heat of the moment. You have to remain calm, level-headed, calculated. You have to choose your words carefully, especially where you are currently. You're in Warsaw, Poland. You're on the border with Russia. There is an enormous amount of tension between the European countries and Russia, as well as the United States. So you don't just say things like that, because, well, what does Russia think when they hear things like this? What has happened in the past to some of the countries that they've either known or been affiliated with? Let's just go down the list: Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen. Do I need to I can keep going. I can keep going. So they automatically think that now he's a target. Now, regardless of what you may think of the man, I personally don't really care about him. I don't care about Putin. I don't really care about this whole Russia war. The only reason I care about it is because of the grotesque amount, and I know I've said this in multiple videos, the grotesque amount of, to put it frank, BS that Western media has been propagating to the masses. Quick personal story. When I met with my friend yesterday afternoon, there was an event downtown that we just stopped and had a few drinks, and then we walked to another place. And then as we were walking, an older gentleman walked by with a brown jacket. And it was like, when I say older man, he had to have been, if he wasn't in his late 50s, he was in his early 60s. And he, on his arm, and this brown jacket looked like a military, like a military jacket, like a military like throw over, like a just a field jacket. And on his arm, he had a patch. He had two patches. He had the Ukrainian flag, and he had the symbol for the Azov battalion. So it just had me aghast for a second. I said, hold on. I had to double take. I looked twice. I looked as he walked by, and I didn't say anything, obviously, but I was just like, oh my God, like this is what propaganda has done in this country, in America. So that's the only reason why I've cared about this whole conflict to this extent, why I've done so much research. I've watched so many videos. I've read so many articles. I've done my digging. I've done my due diligence. I've worked very hard to make sure that I don't say anything that I'm going to regret due to me being wrong. And a lot of things I hope I am wrong. There are a lot of things going on in this world that are pointing towards another global conflict, which we're all hoping and praying doesn't happen. So, and of course, the Kremlin, decries this whole thing. This is a statement that is certainly alarming. Moscow, of course, mouthpiece. Like, this is another thing. It's one thing to say these types of things when you're dealing with, like, the Taliban or some Middle East country that has a warlord dictator, that's not liked by the masses but are forced to like him because of fear of retribution from the dear leader. But you can't just I mean, you can say this, but it's as a journalist, but it just shows the absolute lack of respect. And I mean that, like, not like respect like in like a you have to like them. Of course, they're our rival, our adversary, but if you don't treat your enemies with the respect that they command, then you're on a very dangerous path to underestimating them and then eventually falling to them. That's my opinion. Having the wherewithal to respect your enemy and not underestimate them and not treat them like something like below what they actually are in standards when it comes to their people and their country. Because let's face it, I mean, the Russian people have a very positive view of Putin and a fairly positive view of their government. They wouldn't consider Dmitry Peskov just a mouthpiece for the Kremlin. Like, they would consider him a spokesman, someone that to be trusted when he comes on TV and tells the Russian people what is going on. Kind of like how we're supposed to just trust Jen Psaki. But again, we do the same thing. Like, we do the same thing with our own leaders and our own press corps and all that stuff. But that's okay. That's internal criticism. I'm not saying we have to trust everything that they say, but it's just at least give them the respect that they command by whatever distinguished title that they have. If he's a press secretary, if he's a spokesman for the Kremlin, for the office of the president of the Kremlin, or whatever. Small rant there. I went off topic. That wasn't part of the whole thing. We will keep a close eye on the U.S. President's statements. We will take note of them, and we'll continue doing this in the future. So this is pretty in my opinion, pretty intense. I was surprised it didn't receive even more backlash than that initially. But I guess that kind of a response is better than like an overreach by Russia. But this just goes to show just how close we are to things really like flying off the edge. Never before, because Biden has already put in motion to escalate our first strike capabilities on a nuclear scale. So that right there should be alarming. When you have somebody like this in power wanting to escalate and update the first strike capabilities and of our nuclear arsenal is very alarming. It's very alarming, and it's not something I like thinking about because it makes me makes me very nervous. But with all of this, we're facing a huge supply crisis, mainly oil, which is causing gas prices to skyrocket across this country. To give an example, it used to cost just a little over $30 to fill my tank during the height of our energy independence. Now it's costing almost $60. It's almost doubled in price to fill my tank, and that hurts me because I'm not particularly well off. I do okay, but the average. I mean, anybody is going to be hurt by a price gouge like that. But this, I mean, just coming from me personally, I'm letting just saying that it hurts, it impacts me. So when you have these types of things happening, it all can be fixed. Obviously, I've talked about the Keystone Pipeline. I've talked about the federal leases on for drilling and all that stuff, which the White House has openly lied about the companies just refusing to drill or not act on them. It's like, no, there's just nothing there, or there's nothing worth harvesting there. Or we want leases on these lands where there's plentiful resources, but you're not giving them to us. So all of this stuff could be fixed. Shoot, like, if it wasn't for this insane woke outcry about this whole war in Ukraine, and this is anyway, I'm not going to get off on another tirade. We would still be able to. Well, first off, with this whole banning Russian oil imports and all that stuff, none of that would have been necessary if we were just energy independent again. So since we're not, we were having to import more Russian oil. Now we're not doing that. So now we're going around with our hat in our hand, asking Saudi Arabia and Iran and other Middle Eastern countries and even Venezuela to give us to help pump more oil out and help us out a little bit. And it's absolutely ridiculous. So with that going on, Joe Biden decides to do this. This was March 31st. This is Thursday. Today, I'm authorizing the release of 1 million barrels of oil per day for the next 6 months, over 180 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This is a wartime. This is the big one. Wartime bridge to increase oil supply until production ramps up later this year. Really, Joe Biden? I did not know we were in a war. I wasn't aware. I didn't know we were in a war. So there is a lot to unpack in just this tweet right here. So first off, of course, he did not write this. His team of press advisors, he probably has a social media manager. Imagine getting that gig. 1 million barrels of oil per day for the next 6 months. Okay, so just to get the accurate number, because I could guesstimate, I want to go ahead and get the actual number that's used per day. How many barrels of oil does the U.S. use a day? 20 million barrels of oil a day. That's the official number. 20 million barrels of oil per day, and we're releasing 1 million per day for the next 6 months. 6 months. So that's obviously not going to do a doggone thing. And this is coming from the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This was created in response to the Arab oil embargo. I think it was during the 70s. And that's what set gas prices way over the edge. That's what caused a huge crisis as far as supply goes. And this reserve was created so that the United States would never have to deal with this ever again. We would be able to have an emergency reserve in order to supply our needs during a crisis like that. So that way we could last and see it to the end and not have the populace be too impacted. See, this was back when some forms of the government actually still kind of cared about the American people, or at least cared enough about how the American people would perceive them, that they would do something that would actually protect them in situations like this. So that right there, just another reason this is a terrible idea is that it wasn't just made for that type of a situation. This is also used in disaster. Like if there were, God forbid, there was a earthquake, tornado, explosion, hurricane, anywhere near refineries or something like that. If refineries were destroyed or something like that, we would have a petroleum reserve that would be able to at least ease the damage to the supply chain of oil to the rest of the country. We're just going through these barrels at an alarming rate, because this is the second time that he's released barrels from the SPR. And also this was also supposed to be for in case of another major war we would have, because obviously we need oil to fill our, for ships, tanks, helicopters, on the battlefield. This was going to help with that as well. Now, the last thing, of course, is what I just outlined, the wartime bridge until production ramps up later this year. Like, what are you talking about? What production? I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Wartime bridge to increase oil supply. Wartime. I just can't get over that. Like, what the heck is he talking about when he says wartime? Well, we're not in a war. I didn't know we were in a war. Thanks for telling us, Joe. So is that foreshadowing things to come? Is this a confession that we really are in a flashpoint war with Russia? Do we have people on the ground in Ukraine that we just don't know about? What is really going on here? That, and if none of those are the case, then he's just straight up lying, because we have nothing to do with this. So, really interesting words there. And then, of course, until production ramps up later this year. What production? What are you talking about? Are you talking about our production? Because we're not producing anything. You closed everything down. Are you talking about production in the Middle East? Because as of today, Saudi Arabia is already at as much oil as they can produce. They're already at their cap. Are you talking about later this year when we can uncancel Russia and start importing their oil again? What on earth are you talking about? This guy and the people around him writing this tweet don't know what they're talking about. They don't. And that's what's very scary. And of course, talking about the possible regime change in Russia, talking about him telling the soldiers in Poland that, telling them when you're over there, you're going to see these things, people standing in front of tanks. And the fact that the Pentagon and his Secretary of State, or, Blinken and all these people have to come out and completely contradict him and correct what he said, and then go what he meant to say. So that's always the one phrase you want to look out for. What the president meant to say is, and what they're saying is basically just walking back the statement at that point. He didn't mean to say that. It's not that he didn't mean to say it, it's that he shouldn't have said that. And what he said was wrong. So this is just god awful, and I'm not looking forward to it, because it means things are only going to get worse. So with that, over the weekend, many people were saying that, Russia's retreating, they're retreating from Kiev, they're retreating from Kherson, they're retreating, and the Ukrainians are fighting back, they're pushing back the Russian bear. Oh, if only it were so true. Oh, it'd be like a Hollywood movie, wouldn't it? Makes sense for an actor president like Zelensky, So, And of course, that's all you do. You just put Russia retreating in the Google search, and this is all you see. This is all you see from all of your favorite propaganda machines. And, there was the attack on the Volgograd oil refinery, I believe, in Russia by some Ukrainian helicopters, which was legit. I mean, you have to give them credit for being able to fly in under the radar and successfully hit that oil refinery. But it's one of those things where it's like you're just pissing off your attacker at that point even more. Like, you're not really doing anything that's going to help you win the war. You're just doing things to extend your own demise, And as far as responding to these nonsensical reports here, so I've been saying, and I've outlined in a number of videos, how the Russians are focused on the eastern part of Ukraine, primarily what borders the Donbass region, like Mariupol, which is where the last remnants of the Azov battalion were being held up. And that was primarily one of the main objectives, was eliminating that part of the Ukrainian military. Well, of course, eliminating the military in general, but of course, more focused on the Azov battalion first and foremost. So what they did is they encircled, like in a cauldron, and they slowly choked them out, and were now doing the dirty work, block by block, building by building, and taking them out with the assistance of the Chechen war fighters. And these other parts of the invasion force for Russia, encircling Kiev, Kherson, other parts of other cities of Ukraine, Kharkiv. Well, Kharkiv was like another target city for the Russians. They were that was all done in order to prevent the Ukrainians from reinforcing their army in the east. So that way they would have a much quicker time of eliminating them completely. So they did that. They pretty much declared victory in the east. So now they're pulling back their forces to regroup. They're also rotating their men who have been fighting constantly since this thing started to bring in fresh troops. And the fighting is going to pretty much continue. Now, they've already have announced that phase 1 of their operation is complete, which I believe was the taking of the liberating of Mariupol and completely liberating the Donbass region of constant artillery shelling from the Ukrainians. And if you have the stomach for it, if you have the heart for it, I highly recommend watching some of Patrick Lancaster's videos on YouTube. He's on the ground in Mariupol. He's been going with separatists into the battlefield, picking up civilians that are wounded, trying to help them escape. He's been doing interviews with the people there. And that's true heartbreak there. That's true gut-wrenching stuff, especially when you hear some of the stories coming from these people of what's actually happening to them, not at the hands of the Russians. So I highly recommend that if you have, if you can bear it. I mean, there's some people who don't care, who aren't fazed by it or whatever, or maybe they're bothered, maybe it affects them a little bit. But, I'm sure there are other people out there who it would really bother them to watch that stuff, like make them very upset. I know it upset me a little bit. There was one video that really made me upset because, someone was in ambulance, and I think a family member was next to them. It was this woman. She was crying and like saying, "Please help please help him, please save him." And they were telling stories about what had happened to them and how they were basically just locked in a basement for dead. I'm not going to say any more about it. Just, if you want to, go check it out. Patrick Lancaster on YouTube. Incredible reporting and an incredible courage to be out there in the thick of things, covering this whole thing. So that's basically what the Russian forces are actually doing. And of course, I wasn't surprised when they started saying that, they're retreating, and I seriously wasn't surprised when I saw all these reports coming out after, learning that phase one was complete, I'm like, okay, phase two is basically going to be the push. Once they regroup and resupply, they're going to push a little bit further to the east. I would imagine they're going to turn their focuses on Kharkiv and maybe Kherson and some other smaller towns around that area, and pretty much at this point go back to the negotiating table with more leverage, which has always been their game plan. And with more leverage, and say, hey, all right, we have you here. Okay, we got this done. Okay, are you ready now? Are you ready now? And as they continue to move further and further, because the last thing Putin wants to do is take Kiev. He'll surround the city and basically strong arm them into more negotiations. But taking Kiev would be difficult. It wouldn't be impossible. It would just take very long. They wouldn't be able to guarantee a limit on civilian deaths. It would be very bad. So that's basically what's going on there. What I also wanted to say real quick about the economy here in America, this whole snowball effect. This is just one point I'm going to make. I'm trying to make this video not as long, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. But the snowball effect of rising prices, gas prices, this is going to be pushing more people. I heard this point was made on the news. It's like, this should help pushing more people to choose to telework and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, hey, I can telework from home, but I'm definitely not encouraged to, because of my wonderful boss. I really don't have anything against people I work with. It's just I hate driving into the city, and I hate how much of a boomer my boss is when it comes to being in the office. You got to be in the office. It's like, that's beside the point. So people do, sure, they work from home. But the one thing that people are missing is that the gas prices are still expensive. Diesel fuel is even more expensive, which is what's transporting a lot of supplies to stores, grocery stores, stocking, that's helping stock the shelves of things that we need. And of course, that price always gets offset on the customer when it comes to the price of goods, because it's all part of logistics. So that becomes more expensive. So the money you're actually saving on gas is actually being spent on things that you need, because they're things that you need that are actually starting to cost more. And then everything else is going up as well, including the cost of living as far as rent and all that other stuff. So you're not actually saving money. As a matter of fact, you're losing money. Any pay raise that you got, any pay raise that I got a year ago has already become obsolete. I'm already in a net negative. So that's not working. And what all of this spells for the future, if things continue to go in the direction that they're going, I would not be surprised if we started seeing price control, food stamps for all, and maybe even just like how in California, Slammin' Gavin Newsom is proposing $400 debit gas cards for people. I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes a national thing. And all that's going to do is make inflation soar. The dollar will become even more useless and will buy even less. And the slow death march to communism in America continues. And all of that will come alongside the fall of the petrodollar, as more and more countries are going to see options like paying for gas in rubles with Russia, or using the Chinese yen to purchase oil on an international stage as opposed to using the petrodollar. And once that happens, that's the real nightmare scenario, which is, what keeps me up at night. So join me. Okay, now on to some more domestic things. So, Susan Collins continues to lose touch with reality and has now said that she will vote for Supreme Court nominee Jackson. So if this person, I know she's in Maine, which, people up there, their heads are so full of air, they don't really know what their politicians stand for. They just vote. They just tick the box and they're just whatever, it doesn't matter, because their lives are so detached from the rest of the country. Not for long, though. Not for long. But I have concluded that she possesses the experience, qualifications, and integrity to serve an associate justice on the Supreme Court. I will therefore vote to confirm her to the position. Sure. Of course you will. And of course, Joe Manchin. Look, everybody is all like, I can't believe Joe Manchin is going to vote for Jackson. I'm like, look, he's a Democrat and he's from West Virginia. Don't expect world-class decisions out of this guy every single time. Just because he voted no on this whole on the Build Back Better thing, does not mean that the guy is filled with great ideas. He's still a Democrat. He's still from West Virginia. A broken clock is right twice a day. Some things never change. So, but as far as Collins' statement here, I have concluded that she possesses the experience, qualifications, and integrity. Well, let me take you to this headline. April 3rd, child rapist molested second victim after Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson gave him lax sentence for failing to register as a sex offender. Well, isn't this exactly what I said was going to happen in my previous video? Who would have thunk it, huh? Integrity, qualifications, and experience right there. So, I don't like it, and it looks like it's going to happen. Now, on to one other thing that I want to talk about. Talk/laugh at, because I really got no dog in the fight on this. NFL teams must hire a minority offensive coach in upcoming season, league reports. The NFL will require all of its professional football teams to hire a minority coach or a female as an offensive assistant starting in 2022. This goes hand in hand with the mandatory 2 minority interviews for head coaches. That's a thing as well. I can't wait for the NFL to just die and just never come back or never rebound from the abysmal losses that they're going to have, because this is just stupid. I mean, this is just getting stupid. You don't have these requirements on the field when it comes to your players. Adam Carolla had a great point when it came to this. He said he's a Rams fan. He lives in Los Angeles for God knows what reason. He could live anywhere he wants. And he was like, I cheered on my Los Angeles Rams in the Super Bowl. And on the defensive side of the field, I think it was all but one person were black. And he's like, and I don't have a problem with that, because I'm sure it's because those were the 11 best guys that could be on the field to give us the best chance of winning. And that's exactly what it should be when it comes to coaches. He's like, we wouldn't do this, when it comes to the starting lineups. Can you imagine how backwards the league would be if that was the case for on the field? If things, because it would be a disaster, of course. And this is one thing. This is just something else. Like this is like on par with like Leah Thomas being a woman competing in women's tournaments in college. Like, how long is it until every NFL team must try out at least one female kicker? You know what I mean? Because they already tried this in college. That one college that had the female kicker who completely shanked her one attempt. I mean, look, I'm not trying to make fun of the person here, but that's the type of results you're going to get majority of the time. So, and like all I say to this is, how would people feel if women's leagues started doing the same thing? How would people feel if the WNBA came out and said, for the 2022 season or whatever, all WNBA teams must have at least one male assistant coach or whatever. I don't know how many coaches are on NBA teams. I really don't. I don't know anything about basketball. But I mean, just think about that. Or in soccer, those wonderful ladies on the American team. How would they feel if that was the case? Like, they must have at least one male coach on their staff. Maybe there are. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, what if these same hiring principles started being enforced on women's leagues for men? Oh, we already know what would happen. This is sexism. This is, women can't have anything on their own, blah, 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 blah. Like, the catch-22 would be off the the double-edged sword would be off the charts. The hypocrisy would be astounding. It would be comical. It would be beyond comical. It would be just completely separated from reality. It would just be, just thinking about that. It just drives me nuts. And this is just a further nail in the coffin of professional sports. Like, nobody cares about this stuff. All they want to do is does the team have the best players possible on the field? Yes. Are they winning? I hope so. I want them to win, and I want them to look good doing it. That's basically all it is. Nobody cares about this other stuff. And the 10 people that do on Twitter are the ones yelling the loudest, and those are the ones that the professional sports leagues are listening to. So that is it right there. I will leave you with this. So this is a video, a clip of a live stream from Academic Agent. I really hope he doesn't mind me sharing this clip. It's just a clip from what one of the people on there said, and I really enjoyed it, and I think it rings really true. So I'll go ahead and play this clip now. It's about 3 minutes, and the user, or the person on there, the gentleman, is Morgoth, and he had a really good take on when it comes to America and the direction that the West is going in. So go ahead and let this play.
Has anybody seen the clip of Alexander Dugin arguing with the BBC presenter? It was from about 2016. And because, he's a controversial figure. I haven't read his book. I'm not an Islamo-Duginist or Eurasianist or whatever you see all over online now. But it was interesting. It's like a 12-minute clip. I saw it on Ralph's channel a while back. And what it was he was arguing about truth with the BBC presenter. And it was as if Dugin was taking postmodernism to its kind of logical conclusion. And the BBC presenter was saying, well, there's only one truth. And Dugin was saying there isn't. Like, we in Russia, we have our own truth, and you in the West have your truth. And that you are going to have to start and respect our truth and the way that we view the world. And the BBC presenter said, because this was around the time of the Syria involvement with Russia, and the BBC presenter said, well, I witnessed the bombing of, was it Aleppo by Russians? And, we all saw that. We all saw that bombs hit the civilians. A city was bombed, and it was a terrible thing. And Dugin was like, well, no, we didn't see that. When America bombs Baghdad, Americans are seeing one thing, and Russians and Chinese and Arabs and Indians, they're looking at something completely different. And he really tied this BBC presenter in knots. But I thought it was interesting because if he's as influential as is rumored, you can kind of see what they're thinking about here. And it's basically they need to keep. It's not just the woke. It's much more than that. It's the fact that they see this stuff coming out of liberal democracy, the American frame, suffocating the whole world, and they're sick to death of it. And you can imagine that in recent years. I did an article on my Substack called America's Toxic Rebrand, where the point that I made was that the way that America exported Americanism in the past, in the 80s, like Marty McFly or Rocky, were more subversive to the Soviet Union or an Islamic regime than what the woke is, because the woke comes along as a subversive force. If you see Rocky, and it sells an American ideal where if you work hard and you're a good guy and you just stick in there, buddy, you'll make it in the end. Everybody in America has the potential to be a winner. If you stand on your own 2 feet and do your best, run up the steps and jump up and down. And it's a beautiful thing. It's really powerful. But nobody, and I can understand why certain regimes would find that really subversive, but nobody's being subverted by the woke stuff because they think it's just outright it's too obvious, it's too disgusting and gross. And so there's an immediate revulsion to it. And then they can start thinking, we need our own truth. We need our own framing to look at the world. And I think that's what's going on. That's why you're going to end up with a multipolar world.
Okay, so I really like what Morgoth said there, and I wholeheartedly agree, because I feel like that's the America that so many people, not only in this country but abroad, are really hoping that we can get back to. You know, that was the face of America, the underdog, the person who had grit, who had toughness, who had the mental fortitude to continue to work hard in the face of insurmountable odds in order to make themselves successful, to accomplish the things that they wanted to accomplish, to be an example for other people in the same situation as them, to prove to everybody that it's not just wealth and brains and whatever that goes into someone being completely successful and winning. You know, sometimes you just have to outwork somebody. And if you can outwork the competition, if you can stay vigilant and stay consistent, you will get there. You will become successful. You will make it to the top. You will win. You will be a winner. And that was the reason why so many people wanted to come to America in the first place, because they were willing to put in the work to make it. You know, that's why so many Europeans after the Second World War and beyond wanted to come to America. Obviously part of it because the whole continent was completely destroyed, but also because they felt like their best chance at succeeding in life was in America. And that's why still so many people try to get here today. You know, for reasons, whatever, you can debate the reasons, but I think most people still try to get here because they believe that they can put in the work to be successful here and live whatever's left of the American dream at this point. So that's something that I really resonated with as an American, and I agree wholeheartedly with Morgoth. I think that is something that we in America need to get back to, and I mean in a very desperate way we need to get back to, because we're falling very far from it, and soon this country is going to be something. I mean, it's already unrecognizable to me from how it was 20 years ago. I remember what this country was like 20 years ago, and it's like I've woken up in a different universe, almost. So with that aside, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. If you've subscribed, thank you so much for subscribing. If you've liked the video, thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate it. I do these for fun, just because it interests me. I have a full-time job, so, of course, nothing would make me happier if this was all I had to do every single day. I'd be able to make a lot more content, but life is life. So, if you liked the video, of course, please share it, comment, subscribe, like, follow, whatever it is. I upload this on 3 different media sites, so with that said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again in the next one.